you look around with what's happened even before March of 2020, and then since then, the adoption of the cloud, forget the technology side of it, it has given mid-size and small businesses a platform and access to world-changing technology so that the smallest company in the world can have access to the same sort of remarkable technology that the biggest companies in the world have. So,
growing a business requires a holistic approach that extends beyond sales and marketing. This approach needs alignment among people, processes, and technologies. So if you're a business owner, operations, or finance leader looking to learn growth strategies from your peers and competitors, you're tuned into the right podcast. Welcome to the WBS Podcast, where scalable growth using business systems is our #1 priority. Now, here is your host, Sam Gupta.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the WBS Podcast. I'm Sam Gupta, your host and principal consultant at digital transformation consulting firm Elevate IQ. While software as a service has made the buying and implementing enterprise software such as ERP easier, evaluating SaaS options is never easy. With so much at stake with growth, understanding the implications of a cloud infrastructure provider is essential. You will have tons of questions such as security, location of your data, and vendor lockup issues. Finding the answers to such questions is hard, unless you understand the cloud providers at the macro level. In today's episode, we have our guest, Bob Evans, who discusses what SMB customers need to know about cloud infrastructure providers. He also discusses the evolution of these vendors and their direction for the next 5 to 10 years. Finally, we touched on why understanding cloud infrastructure issues are still relevant and essential, even if the SaaS options may seem straightforward. Let me introduce Bob to you. Bob Evans is one of the world's leading analysts of the enterprise tech phenomenon, the cloud industry, and the global phenomenon of digital transformation. He is the creator of the Cloud Wars content network, a strategic advisor to CEOs and CMOs, and a keynote speaker. In 2012, he was recruited by Larry Ellison to become Oracle's first chief communications officer, and he left there after 5 years to launch the two businesses he runs today, Cloud Wars Media LLC and Evans Strategic Communications LLC. He has given keynote talks about business innovation, digital transformation, and customer-centric business on every continent on Earth. Well, not Antarctica, and has written thousands of articles on those subjects. With that, let's get to the conversation.
Hey Bob, welcome to the show.
Sam, it's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me on.
Of course. Just to kick things off, do you want to start with your personal story and your current focus?
Sure, Sam. I have been in and around the tech business for a long time. I was first involved with it from the media side. So I worked in magazines and some websites covering the tech industry from a business perspective. And Sam, it's very easy to see if anybody talks to me for more than 10 seconds. I'm not a technologist, but I've always been fascinated about the business value and the business innovation that technology can help drive. So I really enjoyed that time in the media, but probably about 10 or 12 years ago, Sam, I decided I wanted to get out of the media business and into the technology business. So I worked for a year at SAP, where I helped them talk to the world more about the customer success that was happening, more about customer innovation and so on. And then I was recruited by Oracle. So I went over there and I worked for Larry Ellison for a while. I was their first chief customer officer. And then after about 5 years there, Sam, I thought, I'm not getting any younger. So if I want to live out this dream to start a couple companies of my own, now's the time to do it. So I started a consulting business about 4 years ago that's still running, doing well. But 2 years ago, I started Cloud Wars Media, which allows me to cover, analyze, dig into, and really try to understand how these big world-changing tech companies are aligning themselves with what business people need today. So not so much about the tech, but more about the business innovation it can help drive for customers.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to dig deeper into all of that because my customers may not be directly affected by that, but they definitely need to know about the positioning of these different vendors. But before we have a standard question for all of our guests, and that is going to be, Bob, your perspective on growth. When you think of the word business growth, what does it mean to you?
Sam, I'm certainly concerned about it myself, right? I have two relatively small businesses, an
Yeah,
entrepreneur, so I want to see it happen. And I
yeah,
think, Sam, right, it is so much today. We hear so much about these big tech companies, and you look at these $1 trillion valuations for some of these giant companies, and it seems almost like, well, that's just for the big folks. But you look around with what's happened even before March of 2020, and then since then,
yeah,
the adoption of the cloud, forget the technology side of it, it has given mid-size and small businesses a platform and
yeah,
access to world-changing technology so that the smallest company in the world can have access to the same sort of remarkable technology that the biggest companies in the world have. So I think all of that is huge factors for growth. And the other thing, Sam, that I think is so critical about growth these days, for the excellent audience you've built up on your show, is
yeah,
that it's the mindset of leaders these days in companies about growth, right? They've got to
yeah,
be able to take their past and
yeah,
all the wonderful things they've done in the past, and then almost like a deck of cards, they've got to shuffle that and come up with a different way of playing for the future, right? With
yeah,
customers and prospects calling more the shots about what happened. How quickly can these companies adapt to new opportunities, match the engagement methods and preferences of their customers, understand new ways to apply some of these exciting new technologies, not because the technology is cool, but because it lets them do new and better things for their customers. So I think, Sam, I entered 2021 with a huge amount of growth and optimism about the growth
yeah.
that small and mid-sized businesses can have in this remarkable time that we're in right now.
Yeah, yeah. So now we want to discuss about the infrastructure play overall. So obviously, from the cloud application perspective, small to medium sized businesses may not need to worry about the IT infrastructure just because their vendors are providing it. But in my mind, as a technology guy, when I look at it, there is a lot of cross pollination happening in the market. Some of these apps are deployed on AWS, some are deployed on Oracle infrastructure, some are on Microsoft Azure. And in my opinion, there is a lot of implication that the business owner need to know. So let's talk from the macro perspective, Bob. What is the positioning of each of the cloud infrastructure provider in the market? And obviously, we have three major cloud providers, and that is going to be your Microsoft, all the world, Oracle, and then Google. So tell us the positioning of each of the cloud infrastructure provider and where they fit in their positioning.
Sam, this is it is wild, isn't it? Right? You think back, it was only about 15 years ago that
Yeah,
Amazon decided that they had an opportunity to break out this specialized internal capability they had. And they said, this has helped us so much, we can start a whole new
yeah,
business about this, just 15 years ago.
yeah,
And now it has become what I think is the whole cloud business has become, Sam. I think it's the greatest growth market that the world has ever seen.
yeah,
And it isn't great so much just because the technology is wonderful, but it's great because of the capability that it gives to customers. And
yeah,
Amazon deserves a ton of credit for
yeah,
being the first one to seize on this and
yeah,
to not only create the technology that made this possible, but the go-to-market possibilities, right? You always hear about that thing, hey, just swipe a credit card and you can be up on the Amazon cloud.
yeah,
That, as you know, Sam, that's not how the technology industry was accustomed to working. It was
yeah.
complex and you had lawyers and 500-page contracts and so on and so on.
Tell
And
me about
they were
it.
talking, right, Sam, in terms of quarters and years before you could really get moving on things. So
Yeah,
that ease of use, the simplicity of buying and so on that Amazon brought to it, that I think will go down as one of the great achievements in the technology industry history,
yeah, yeah,
in the history of this technology marketplace. Then you get a company like Microsoft that comes in, right? And when
yeah,
Microsoft was first getting into the cloud, one of the things they said is, well, we offer this infrastructure, but
yeah,
we also have software applications and
yeah,
middleware that
yeah,
allows a small, mid-sized business to connect everything from their biggest systems down to their desktops. And
Yeah.
early on, Sam, I think it was interesting because some of the bigger cloud companies, laughed at that. They said, Microsoft, this is, who cares about that?
Yeah.
But as Satya Nadella said just the other day on the Microsoft earnings call, he said more and more Microsoft customers are valuing them because they said Microsoft's solutions in the cloud can go from end to end, every part of what Nadella calls their digital estate. And I think that's one of the factors behind Microsoft's incredible growth. So Amazon has chosen to stick strongly in the infrastructure space, and they've also built out into databases. I think they have 16 different specialized databases, which can be very useful. Microsoft has the infrastructure. They've added database to that. They've got the hybrid play that lets companies connect their older traditional systems in with the new cloud possibilities. Plus, they've got things that connect Office and Windows, and now they've got Microsoft Dynamics, ERP system, HCM, CRM, which is now, Sam, it's over a $2 billion business. And on top of that, Nadella released this number. It's the first time Microsoft's ever said the size of Microsoft's cybersecurity business, $10 billion in the last 12 months. So Microsoft can offer a wide range of solutions. Then you've got Google Cloud, and what Thomas Kurian has done there in the last couple of years has been remarkable. He too has taken them beyond the infrastructure play, right? They've developed, now they're starting to pair up their infrastructure expertise with what they can do with data and AI and ML. So they're creating some of these industry-specific solutions that a retail company can use to be able to manage these new processes that have arisen over the last couple of years. Everybody going omni-channel. How you manage inventory differently when it isn't just the traditional retail model, when it has to be done, buy online, pick up at the store, curbside pickup, delivery to your home, however those things happen. So there's a whole new range of applications coming out from Google Cloud. And then, as you mentioned also, Sam, what Oracle's doing, and I think if Larry Ellison's belief wins over more and more customers, what he's done is create different type, what he calls a Gen 2 infrastructure that's more secure. It's autonomous. You don't need to have people manage it. And then that is coupled with his big bet there is the Oracle's autonomous database. Again, not going deep in the technology, but the play there, they said, is no human intervention, no errors introduced by humans. Plus, Oracle has a huge suite of applications that they can tie in. So 4 different major infrastructure providers with 4 very different approaches to the market.
Okay, amazing. So let's talk from the perspective of the manufacturing CFO. So let's say if I'm the manufacturing CFO and I am completely sold on cloud, I understand the kind of benefits it brings to me, but do I need to know more about the infrastructure where my ERP application is deployed? So if I talk to my ERP vendor, they say that you don't have to worry about anything. The only thing you need to care for is your subscription license fee that you are going to pay. But, if my application is deployed on AWS versus Microsoft versus in a tiny shop right here in my town. So tell me more about that. Should I care for that as a CFO?
Sam, it has changed so much, a lot of this thinking about that over the past several years. It used to be that a lot of business customers, a CFO and a mid-sized manufacturing company might think, wait a minute, this cloud thing, right? At least if I go down to my data center, I know that I can protect that. But now there's other companies telling me to send my data, send everything, the most important assets in my company out over the internet. So there was understandably a lot of concern about this. What I think so a valuable insight for your audience, Sam, is that these big cloud vendors that we've just been talking about, each one of them can invest billions of dollars every year in security, in performance, in upgrades, and things like that. Whereas any sort of, I don't know, I don't think there's too many mid-sized manufacturing companies that could spend millions of dollars on security, let alone billions. So, Sam, I think there's been a leap that's been made in the past few years that the confidence now that companies can have in AWS, in Microsoft Azure, in Google Cloud, in Oracle as being highly credible, rock solid things that go on there. So does the CFO need to dig into that a whole lot? I think, they want to make sure that the SLAs are covered and all of that. But as far as getting into the technology, no, I don't think that here in 2021, anybody needs to worry about that. There's no foolproof system for sure.
Yeah.
So I think customers have to apply a lot of rigor in the contract talks about that. But on the straight up, the implementation of the technology, they are doing, each of those big cloud companies is doing a great job, I think, with ensuring it, because they know if they get one problem, if they have one breach that occurs, everybody in the world is going to know about it. Everybody in the world is going to say, hey, wait a minute, you can't handle this. I'm going to go to somebody else. So it's definitely in the interest of these big cloud vendors to be even better than they promise.
Okay, amazing. So let's talk some more from the perspective of the CFO. So let's say, if I'm the CFO of the manufacturing organization, when I hang out with my buddies and they keep telling me about the vendor locking, that if I utilize my cloud, then I'm going to be locked to a specific vendor and they can raise the price at any point of time. Right now, they might be giving you a cheaper deal on the ERP, but once you are locked, then they are going to increase the price. So what would be your perspective for a manufacturing CFO on that?
This is it's a great question, Sam. All of your questions have been very good and I think very helpful for your audiences. And I think that reflects, a big point that I wanted to make here is up until about 3 or 4 years ago, Sam, it seemed to me that the whole cloud business was being driven by and built around the aspirations of the tech vendors. Right. And I don't think there's a manufacturing CFO in the world who would ever on his or her own have come up with terms like platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, software as a service, data as a service, everything as a service. All right. That's a tech industry term. And slowly but surely over the last handful of years, the customers have started to push back on the tech vendors and say, look, you keep all the acronyms you want, but keep those inside. Here's the business problem that I need you to help me solve. I have to turn inventory more quickly. I have to manage my supply chain more effectively. I have to be able to customize the manufacture of products because each of my customers wants things a little bit differently. I've got to be able to ship for customer A to 3 different locations, for customer B to 12 different locations. For customer C, I have to ship 6 different variations to each of 5 different locations. So Sam, the complexity of what's being asked of manufacturing companies today, mid-sized, small manufacturers that don't have a ton of money to spend on information technology, I think there's a wonderful opportunity for them to be able to say, I'll find the right technology partners in the cloud to help me do this because they've got the infrastructure to run faster and more securely than I ever could. They've got these new applications that can be configured to my precise needs. And I think, Sam, there's also that growing sense that if the tech industry vendors, if they try to make their competitive problems, turn that over into being a problem for their customer, where the customer says, hey, if I get into your stuff and you try to box me into a corner, I will drop you so fast, you won't know what hit you. But if you prove to me, the customer, that you can help me work with other tech vendors, I will give more and more of my business to you. And the customers have come around and started to be more in control, Sam, I think, of some of these decisions, forcing the tech vendors to adopt more open policies toward that. It's not a perfect state now by any means, but more and more it's going in the directions where the customers are speaking with their wallets and exercising, more of the leverage they have in these negotiations.
Okay, amazing. So let's say if, again, I'm looking for some sort of application and I'm completely sold on cloud, and I have to choose among some of the vendors that are going to be well known in the market. So let's say if I'm choosing between Amazon or Microsoft or Oracle or Google, okay, let's talk about the top 4, right? So if I have to choose an ERP application that is probably deployed in one of those, should I be paying attention to any variables from the infrastructure perspective, or shall I simply be paying attention to my business aspects of the application?
Yes, Sam, again, great insightful questions here from you. And I think the big thing here is to see that competition, free market competition is a great thing. So you have these world-class big companies that have been around for 30 or 40 years, like Oracle, like Microsoft, like SAP, coming out, and they've got these huge numbers of customers all over the world. They want to keep them. So it's in all of their best interest to innovate more rapidly, come out with better capabilities, and to be more flexible in both the types of products that they offer to customers, especially in the mid-market and smaller customers, but also they've got to be able to play with each other in a nice way. Even if the tech vendors don't want to do that, they know the customers are demanding it. So I think the best source for a CFO in a company trying to, which one of these I pick, is to look at the customer references. Because you can have the technology people in a company look at the features on a website or demos, and they can go through that all day. But who is the tech vendor that is able to put up more customers who will publicly reference and state, this company, vendor XYZ, not only met all of my technical specifications, they were incredibly good to work with. They met their deadlines, they met their budgets, and they want to help me not just, do the transaction where I agree to pay this, I push somebody a check. The cloud, because it's not a permanent license, it forces the tech vendors to win back that business year after year after year. So Sam, I think the customers are taking control here. And if I was, going to offer counsel to your audiences about where to look in making these decisions, the number one factor should be customer references.
Customer references. Okay, amazing. So now let's go back to, again, those 4 big vendors. And if I were in a specific industry, are one of these vendors going to have edge in a specific industry, or are they evenly positioned across the industries in their capability? So let's take an example. Let's say if I'm in the manufacturing versus distribution or healthcare, okay? Is Oracle going to be better suited in a specific industry, or Microsoft is going to be better suited? So can you talk about the positioning of these vendors from the industry perspective?
Sam, this is, I think, the industry issue that you've just raised. I think that will be the single hottest and most innovation-filled category in the whole tech business in 2021 and also into 2022. Because up until recently, the big tech software vendors, their applications were meant to work horizontally, right? Across HCM or across CRM, across ERP. So they could handle the horizontal applications. More and more, what all the big tech companies are doing now is they've swung around and they're starting to develop industry specific applications for all of the industries you just mentioned. Right. And so everybody's moving in this direction, and they are applying now to this different tools that help businesses in those industries harness the power of data. So more AI powered applications, machine learning applications, the ability in a manufacturing company to help deploy IoT technologies and to be able to harness that data through these new industry specific solutions. So Sam, I don't think I could state that there's, any one of those companies does a particularly, outstanding job in those. Each of them has their strengths. And again, I'd come back to that customer reference point of view. So if I'm in the discrete manufacturing business, which one of those companies, because they all say, oh yeah, I have an application that'll do that. But which one is able to put 3 customers on the phone with me that will say, oh yeah, this has worked better than we thought it would. Or who might say, you know what, stay away from vendor X. They promised the world and they didn't deliver anything. But the interesting thing, Sam, and if you go back to your first question about growth, is this is entirely new. So there's industry specific capabilities that are coming up. Nobody's ever had this before. And the opportunity to have those applications, greater understanding and ability to leverage and gain insights from the data around that, and to be able to move as fast and accelerate operations to move at the speed of the markets around you. That's why I think there's big opportunities for growth and optimism in 2021 and 2022.
Okay, amazing. So obviously you interview one of the brightest people in the tech industry, Bob. So, what I'm going to ask you is, do you have any interesting stories that you heard in your recent interviews that you may be able to share with our audience?
Yeah, Sam, I think what was fascinating is I've talked to the CEOs of the big tech companies recently. We did a series called the CEO Cloud Outlook 2021.
Yeah,
I never talk to the CEOs of the tech companies about their products, right? But
yeah,
ask them instead, what are your customers telling you or asking you about this year that's different from last year? What's
yeah,
the number one priority of CEOs? What do they come to you and say, hey, please help me with this problem, help me with
yeah,
this opportunity? And more, it's around things like, how do I get to know my customers better? How can I customize and
yeah,
personalize the sorts of products and services I make? How do I, for the last 75 years, I made these sort of products in my factory and I
yeah,
sold them this way. But
yeah,
now the customer is saying, I want you to make different variations. I want you to sell to me differently. I demand to buy from you, and on and on. So how do companies take your audiences, so a CFO at a manufacturing company, a distribution company, how do they take all the expertise they've built up over the last 50 or 75 or 100 years, and then how do they leverage that with these new digital tools and capabilities to become faster, smarter, more customer
yeah,
focused, and better able to see what the trends are that are coming and be prepared to move as fast as the world around them. So I think that is the most interesting thing that I hear the CEOs say. And one of my favorite lines, Sam, is from Thomas Kurian, the CEO of
yeah,
Google Cloud.
yeah,
And he said, we have a tendency
yeah,
in the tech industry to think whatever's going on right now,
yeah,
that's the biggest thing ever. He said, but it isn't. He's right. History shows us that the
yeah,
world changes rapidly. He
yeah,
said, so he said, a lot of people think that what was going on 2 or 3 years ago
yeah,
is going to be the same as what will be going on 2 or 3 years from now. And he said, it isn't. So he said, what we're trying to do at Google Cloud is to help our customers
yeah,
adapt, change, evolve, be agile, be nimble, and be able, again, as I know I've said this a couple of times, but it's such an important capability. How can your audiences, Sam, be able to move as fast as the world around them, as their customers are moving, and to be able to seize new opportunities as they arise? And that's what I think the best cloud industry CEOs are focused on, not the technology. That's a given, but rather,
yeah.
how do I help get that innovation and that power for change and growth into the hands of my customers more easily and more simply?
Yeah. So let's talk about the prediction a bit, because the guys who deal in the macro space, I think they are best positioned to predict how the next 10 years are going to look. So as a manufacturing CFO, how my life is going to change in the next 10 years, Bob? Tell me about it.
Well, I think that, one of the things that's going to happen is, what so many companies are going through right now, Sam, this whole thing that the term digital transformation, perhaps the term has been overused, but the basic concept is more important now than ever before. And I think the number one key issue around digital transformation, which is the way that your CFOs are going to move into the future for these next 5 or 10 years,
Yeah.
is they have to put the customer at the center of everything they do, right? And every company, of course, says that, but not that many companies actually do it.
Yeah.
So how does a manufacturing company allow its customers to come in, not at the end of the process when something is made and shipped, but rather say, customer, you come in, you help me co-create this product that you ideally want. You
Yeah.
help me talk about how it's designed. You help me understand how I can ship this in ways that are most optimal for you.
Yeah.
You help me understand some of the new markets that you're going into so that I can be ready to adapt and change to that. So instead of the old sort of mechanistic world where customer says, I want this, and the manufacturer creates that, and by the time it's all done and set up, the customer said, well, this is what I asked for, but
Yeah.
actually my needs have changed. So we had this sort of start, stop, on, off, backward, forward
Oh
world
my God.
before. And instead is they've got to be able to synchronize, orchestrate, and harmonize operations between the buyer and the seller.
Yeah.
And so looking into the future, I think, how then does a manufacturing company truly put the customer at the center of everything? And Sam, I know you're a pretty young man. You might not recognize this term, but do you ever hear of the term banker's hours?
Banker hours? No.
Right. So
How far back are we going? Please tell.
well, it's this is for an old guy like me. But when I was a kid, Sam, and up until I was in probably my mid-20s or 30s. But banker's hours were. I remember I first heard the term and asked my dad, "What does that mean?" He said, banks are open from 9 a.m. until 3 p.m. Monday through Friday.
Yeah.
None of them are open earlier, none of them open later, none of them are open on weekends. And he said, it's a nice business if you can do that. But the point was the customers didn't have any alternative. There were no ATMs, there was no online banking and so on like that.
Yeah.
So it was a simpler world where the seller was in charge of it. The seller dictated, here's when I'm going to be open. Here's what I will allow you, the customer, to do. Here are the things I will not allow you to do. And the whole world in not that long a time has been turned upside down. I mean, you talk about that to a 20-year-old today and they'll look at you like you're crazy. Why would anybody settle for that? Why would you allow that to happen? There's a million other alternatives. So that genie is out of the bottle now, not just for things like banking and so on like that, but we see it happening everywhere. And look at what's happened in 2020, right? Telemedicine went from being sort of an idea that people dabbled with to now it is the future of medicine. Personalized, customized manufacturing. It was before to be like, wow, that's really expensive and it's hard and I don't know. But now it's going to be the way of the future. You get additive manufacturing, 3D printing, digital twins, mixed reality. These sorts of tools are coming in and they're going to reshape these companies in ways that that right now it's hard to fathom. But what the leaders and your audiences, Sam, those CFOs and executives have to do now is they've got to embrace change as a competitive advantage. They've got to be willing to say, I am going to change more aggressively and more confidently and more rapidly than any of my competitors. And that's going to be an advantage for me instead of the old way of looking at it, which is like, if I can just keep perfecting what I did for the last 50 or 60 or 70 years, I'll become more efficient. So I'm all for efficiency, Sam, but the future is going to be all about innovation, high change, and the ability to adapt to external market conditions as rapidly as possible.
Okay, so we are about time now. Do you have any last minute closing thoughts by any chance, Bob?
I do, Sam, and I would like to ask you a question, and that is, what would you say for your audiences? What do you think are the three biggest priorities for 2021?
So first priority, I would say, is going to be just make sure you are able to sustain. Okay, don't overspend yourself just because a technology could be a shiny object. The number two could be plan for the midterm. You don't want to plan for the long term right now, plan for the midterm. And the third is going to be, don't forget the future. Future is there. So those are my three.
Sam, those are great. Those are great. And I think especially, about the future and, where's this all going to head? The closer that any business, any executive, the closer you can get to your customers. And again, I imagine every executive would say, well, I'm a successful executive. I got to be a successful executive by listening to my customers. But it's not that simple. There's more pressure for companies to do this better than ever before. And I don't think that, for your audiences, you could ever state that, but I love your three priorities. I think those are great. And your show does a terrific job of helping drive those points home and create ideas and new possibilities for your audiences, Sam. So thank you so much for letting me come on and share some ideas with you.
And thank you so much for your time. This has been a fun and insightful conversation, Bob.
Sam, same here. All the best to you and to your audiences. I appreciate the time and had a great conversation with you. Thank you so much.
I cannot thank our guests enough for coming on the show, for sharing their knowledge and journey. I always pick up learnings from our guests, and hopefully you learned something new today. If you want to learn more about Bob, head over to cloudwars.co. It's cloudwars.co. Links and more information will also be available in the show notes. If anything in this podcast resonated with you and your business, you might want to check other related episodes, including the interview with Wayne Seddon, who brings a unique perspective on why business processes are more important for growth than individual business systems. Also, the interview with Brad Babeff, who discusses whether moving to the cloud guarantees business transformation. Also, don't forget to subscribe and spread the word among folks with similar backgrounds. If you have any questions or comments about the show, please review and rate us on your favorite podcasting platform or DM me on any social channels. I'll try my best to respond personally and make sure you get help. Thank you, and I hope to catch you on the next episode of the WBS Podcast.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the WBS Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. For more information on growth strategies for SMBs using ERP and digital transformation, check out our community at WBS.rocks. We'll see you next time.